Go for no. Yes is the destination. No is how you get there. By Richard Fenton and Andrea Waltz. Introduction. Imagine for a moment. You're having a fantastic day. A truly wonderful day. Everything you touch turns to gold. You make 3 sales calls, and you close all 3. You are perfect, 3 for 3, and it's only Monday afternoon. You feel like you're on top of the world, a master of your craft. So, what do you do next? Do you press your advantage? Do you ride that incredible wave of momentum and see how far it can take you? Or, do you decide to call it a day? Do you tell yourself you've earned a break, that it's time to head home, kick up your feet, and enjoy the fruits of your labor? Most of us, if we're being honest, would choose the second option. We hit our goal, or even just get close to it, and we ease off the accelerator. We coast. This is the story of a man named Eric James Bratton, a so-so copier salesman who does exactly that. He has a perfect Monday, and then spends the rest of the week tying up loose ends, getting stuck in meetings, and even planning a round of golf for himself. He was on track for a record-breaking week, but success ruined him. And then, something impossible happens. While playing that round of golf, he slips, hits his head, and wakes up. 10 years in the future. He wakes up in a magnificent house he doesn't recognize, looking at an older, heavier, and far less successful version of himself in the mirror. He is lost, confused, and terrified. But this strange, disorienting journey is about to lead him to a meeting with someone he never expected. The other version of himself. A version that is wildly successful, confident, and living a life beyond his wildest dreams. What was the difference? What single moment, what tiny shift in thinking, sent these 2 identical men down 2 completely different paths? That is the secret at the heart of Go for No, a simple, profound book written by Richard Fenton and Andrea Waltz. It's a parable, a short story with a message so powerful it has transformed the way countless salespeople, entrepreneurs, and dreamers think about success and failure. This isn't just a book, it's a manual for rewiring your entire relationship with rejection. Today, we are going to walk alongside Eric James Bratton on his incredible journey. And I promise you, by the end of our time together, you will understand the one word that stands between you and everything you've ever wanted. It's not the word you think it is. The secret isn't learning how to get more yeses. The secret is learning how to go for no. Book summary. Our story begins with Eric James Bratton, a man who is doing pretty well. He's 28 years old, married, has a steady job as a copier salesman, and makes decent money. He's not the top performer at his company, but he's comfortably in the middle of the pack. He has what most would call a good life. One Monday, he has a spectacular day. He makes 3 calls and closes 3 deals. He's batting 1,000. Thrilled, he calls his wife, Elaine, to share the good news. He's just 1 sale away from hitting his weekly quota. With that thought, he decides he's done enough for the day. It's only 3:30 in the afternoon, but he figures he can pick up dinner and get home in time to watch the basketball game. The next day, Tuesday, he doesn't make any sales calls. Instead, he spends the entire day at the office drowning in paperwork. As he tells the receptionist, selling is 1/10 prospecting and 9/10 paperwork. Wednesday is just as unproductive. He gets roped into a long, pointless focus group that eats up his entire day. By Wednesday night, his perfect week is evaporating. He's lost 2 full days. To make matters worse, he's already planned to play golf the next morning, on Thursday. Lying in bed, he realizes his week is almost over, and he still needs 1 more sale to hit his quota, the quota that keeps his hard-driving boss, Frank, off his back. Frank's motto, displayed on a plaque for all to see, is simple: hit your quota or hit the bricks. Eric isn't worried though. He tells himself he'll just have to play a quick round of golf. He always hits his quota. He never misses. The next morning finds him at Strawberry Creek Golf Course. On the 14th hole, a challenging par 3, his shot goes long, sailing over the green and rolling down a steep slope toward the creek. As he steps onto the mossy rocks to retrieve his ball, his feet slip out from under him. He falls backwards into the icy water, his head connecting with a giant rock. And then, everything goes black. When Eric slowly comes to his senses, the world is wrong. The sharp pain in his hip isn't from hitting a rock, it's from falling out of bed and hitting a hardwood floor. The throbbing in his head is from catching the edge of a nightstand. He calls out for his wife, Elaine, but she's not there. In fact, he's not in his own bedroom. This room is grand, unfamiliar, with exotic art on the walls and thick carpet under his feet. He stumbles out onto a large terrace that overlooks a beautiful, perfectly manicured golf course. Confused and dizzy, he eventually finds his way downstairs, drawn by the sound of someone singing. It's a maid, a woman he's never seen before. When he startles her, she calls him Mr. Bratton and apologizes for not expecting him to be up so late. He asks where his wife is. The maid, Renee, looks at him strangely. "Mrs. Bratton is in Europe," she says, "buying art. You told me yourself." A cold panic begins to set in. He rushes to a bathroom, looks in the mirror, and gasps. The person staring back is him, but older. There are touches of gray in his hair and creases around his eyes that weren't there yesterday. He's carrying at least 20 extra pounds. This isn't just a different house. This is a different version of him. In a panic, he finds Renee and asks her a series of frantic questions. "My name is Eric Bratton, correct?" "Yes, sir." "What do I do for a living?" She looks at him, a mix of fear and concern in her eyes. "Well," she says, "you're a businessman." "Oh, and you write books." "I don't write books," he blurts out. "I sell copiers." Renee insists she's seen the books in his study. He races upstairs and finds them on a bookshelf. 3 hardcover books, all with his name on the spine. Eric James Bratton. The titles are Fail Your Way to Success, One of These Days Is Now, and How to Have the Most Productive Year of Your Life. He pulls one from the shelf, flips it over, and his heart stops. On the back cover is a picture of the author. It's him. His knees feel weak. He sinks into a leather chair and reads the author's biography. It describes a man who shattered every sales record at his company, became a best-selling author, and rose to become the youngest vice president at a massive corporation called Copy Quest. He lives with his wife Elaine, a prominent West Coast art dealer, in La Costa, California. He looks at the desk calendar. The date is March 23, 2000. It's 10 years later. Somehow, he has lost a decade. At the bottom of the page, there's a phone number. Without thinking, he dials. A receptionist at Copy Quest answers. He asks to speak with Eric Bratton, saying he's a very close friend. A moment later, a confident, pleasant voice comes on the line. "Good afternoon, Eric Bratton." It's his own voice, but not his own. It's stronger, more self-assured. He tries to explain the impossible situation, that he went to bed in 1990 and woke up in this house, in the year 2000. The other Eric is about to hang up, dismissing him as a prank caller. Desperate, the younger Eric tells him to call the private line in his study. "I'm sitting at your desk," he says, "and that seems the best way to prove it to you." He hangs up. 10 seconds pass. The phone rings. He picks it up and, to prove he is who he says he is, he tells the other Eric a secret, a story from the 7th grade that no one else could possibly know. A story about a borrowed album, a lie, and a guilty conscience. There is a long silence on the other end of the line. Finally, the confident voice says, "I'll be there in 15 minutes. When the other Eric walks into the study, it's like looking in a mirror, except this version is tanned, impeccably dressed, and about 20 pounds lighter. He is the picture of success. After a long, silent moment, he makes them both a drink and listens patiently as the younger, terrified Eric recounts everything that has happened. The successful Eric isn't shocked or dismissive. Instead, he's certain of one thing. "I don't believe that anything happens by accident," he says. "I'm sure there is a reason. Sooner or later, we'll figure it out." They agree to meet for dinner to try and make sense of the impossible. That night, at an expensive steakhouse, the younger Eric begins to piece together the puzzle. He explains that he's been reading his other self's book, Fail Your Way to Success, and he's realized that their lives were identical. Up to a point, they had the same parents, the same brother, went to the same schools, and even worked the same part-time job during college, selling suits at a men's clothing store. It's at that point that things change somehow, he says. He describes a story from the book, an encounter with a district manager named Harold. The successful Eric's eyes light up. "Do I remember? How could I forget? That's the day that changed my life." But the younger Eric shakes his head. "That's the problem," he says gravely. "That day never happened to me." And here, my friend, is where our two paths diverge. This is the moment that defined everything. The successful Eric recounts the story. He was a new salesman, struggling to make sales, and worried he was about to be fired. The district manager, Harold, was visiting the store, and Eric desperately wanted to impress him. A finely dressed gentleman walked in and, within 30 minutes, Eric had made the biggest sale of his life, an entire wardrobe of clothing totaling over $1,100. He was bursting with pride. Harold sauntered over. "Nice sale, kid," he said, but he didn't seem very impressed. Then he asked a simple question that would change Eric's life forever. "I'm just curious, but what did that customer say no to?" Eric was confused. "What do you mean? The guy bought a suit, a sport coat, shirts, ties, shoes, everything. What do you mean, what did he say no to?" Harold waited calmly and then repeated, "We've already established what he said yes to. What I want to know now is, what did he say no to?" Eric thought back, replaying the sale in his mind. Then, sheepishly, he replied, "Nothing. That customer didn't say no to anything." Harold leaned in. "So," he asked, "then how did you know he was done?" The question hit Eric like a punch. He suddenly realized the customer hadn't ended the sale. He had. Why? Because the customer had hit his own mental spending limit. Eric had never spent that much money on clothes himself, so in his mind, once the customer crossed that $1,000 threshold, the sale was over. Harold looked him in the eye and delivered the line that changed everything. "The salesperson never decides when the sale is over. The customer does." Then he added, "Eric, your fear of hearing the word no is the only thing standing between you and greatness. Greatness. Just 2 letters away. N-O-No. Sitting in that fancy restaurant, the successful Eric explains that this moment shattered his entire understanding of success and failure. He grabs a pen and draws on the back of the menu. "I always thought," he says, "that I was here in the middle, with success on one end and failure on the other." He draws. $success me failures. "I thought my mission in life was to do everything I could to move towards success and away from failure. But Harold opened my eyes. I realized the correct model looks like this." He draws again. $me greater than failure greater than success $. Failure," he explains, his voice filled with passion, "isn't a destination to be avoided. It's the halfway mark on the road to success. It's a stepping stone. Most people get to the sign that says failure and they turn around. They think they're going the wrong way. But they're not. Success is straight ahead." He explains that as children, we don't fear the word no. Think of a child in a grocery store asking for a cookie. The mom says no. The child asks again. The mom says no again. And again, and again. The child doesn't take it personally. He doesn't feel rejected. He just knows that at the end of a long trail of no's, there might be a yes. He has a natural tenacity that we, as adults, have been conditioned to lose. The younger Eric is starting to understand. This one conversation with Harold ignited a fire in his other self. But what happened to him? What happened with the job? He asks weakly. "I went into work the next morning a new man," the successful Eric says. "I was on fire. I finished the year as the #1 salesman in the store, and the next year, #1 in the entire chain." A heavy silence fills the space between them. "I don't remember that," the younger Eric says, his voice barely a whisper, "because that's not what happened to me." "What happened to you?" "My sales didn't improve. In fact, they got worse. 2 months later, I was fired." This is the fork in the road. One man heard Harold's advice and it changed his life. The other man heard the same words, but they didn't sink in. He stumbled over the truth, picked himself up, and went on his way as if nothing had happened. The next few days are a master class in this new philosophy. The younger Eric becomes a student to his older, wiser self. He learns that there are levels to embracing failure. At first, you develop a willingness to fail. You tolerate it as a necessary part of the process. But the real leap happens when you develop a wantingness to fail. You don't just tolerate rejection, you actively seek it out. You start to see it as fun, as a game. Instead of avoiding rejection, the older Eric says, what if we made the decision to seek rejection? Instead of just tolerating no, what if we went out of our way to actually go for no? This is the core idea. You change your goals. Instead of setting goals for the number of yeses you want to get, you set goals for the number of no's you're going to collect. Think about Eric's week. His goal was 4 sales. After getting 3 yeses on Monday, he was almost there. He was ahead of schedule, so he coasted. But what if his goal had been to get 16 no's that week? After 3 yeses and 0 no's, he would have been desperately behind. His success would have forced him to increase his activity, not decrease it, going for no protects you from the complacency that success can bring. The successful Eric has a top salesperson with a license plate that reads N less than 3 with no, in love with no. Why? Because last year, that salesman won an award for getting rejected more than anyone else in the company. And when he received that trophy for failing the most, he placed it right next to his other award, the one for being the #1 salesperson in the entire country. The person who failed the most was also the person who succeeded the most. Success, he learns, is a numbers game. R.H. Macy failed 7 times before his department store finally succeeded. Colonel Sanders was rejected over 1,000 times before he found someone to franchise his chicken recipe. Abraham Lincoln lost 8 elections before he became president. These individuals all had a high failure quotient. They were willing to get knocked down again and again on their road to success. The key to handling this constant rejection is a single, magic word. When a doctor loses a patient on the operating table, they can't afford to crumble. They have to be able to move on to the next person who needs their help. The magic word they learn is, next. When something doesn't go your way, you don't analyze it and let it bury you. You simply say, next, and you move on. The journey continues. The older Eric, who is also a pilot, flies them both up the coast to Pebble Beach in his private plane to play a round of golf with 2 of his top salespeople, Kurt and Cheryl. The younger Eric, once terrified of small planes, learns another lesson. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting in the face of fear. It's being afraid and doing it anyway. On the golf course, Kurt and Cheryl reinforce the lessons. Kurt explains that before he met Eric, he suffered from pike syndrome. He tells a story about scientists who put a large pikefish in a tank with smaller minnows, but separated them with a glass partition. The pike repeatedly slammed its nose into the invisible barrier trying to get to the minnows, until it finally gave up. Then, the scientists removed the glass, but the pike just stayed on its side of the tank, held back by an imaginary wall it had built in its own mind. Most people are like that pike. A few bad experiences, a few bumped noses, and they learn to quit, restrained by self-imposed limitations. Eric, Kurt says, didn't teach him how to succeed. He taught him to enjoy bumping my nose. Cheryl adds another crucial insight. No doesn't mean never. It means not yet. She shares stunning statistics. 44% of salespeople give up after 1 no. Another 22% give up after the second. By the time you get to the 5th try, 92% of all salespeople have given up. But here's the kicker. 60% of all customers say no 4 times before they finally say yes. The quickest way to separate yourself from the pack is to be willing to get at least 5 no's from every person you talk to. After their round of golf, they head to San Francisco, where the successful Eric is scheduled to give a keynote speech to an audience of 3,000 people. He confesses that he's still terrified of public speaking every single time. The comfort zone is never static, he reminds his younger self. It's either expanding or shrinking. He forces himself to do the things that scare him to keep his comfort zone expanding. As he's about to walk on stage, he turns to his younger self and delivers the final, most important lesson of their time together. I don't think your showing up here has happened by chance, he says softly, over the roar of the crowd. I think you've been given a gift, the chance to see what your life could be like if you want it badly enough. But I'm not sure I'm as good as you, the younger Eric responds. Oh, Eric, you still don't get it, do you? I'm not better than you. I am you. The you that you're supposed to be. I'm the vision of your potential, providing of course that you're willing to do what it takes. He hugs his younger self, then turns and walks into the spotlight. Just then, a stagehand tells the younger Eric to move off the stairs. As he turns, his heel catches, he loses his balance, and he falls. And all he can think is, not again. He wakes up in a hospital bed. It's Sunday morning. His wife Elaine and his brother Carl are there, relieved. He's been in a coma for 4 days, ever since he fell out of bed and hit his head on Thursday morning. The entire experience? The 10 years in the future? The successful other self? The life-changing lessons? It was all a dream. A vivid, detailed, powerful dream. Or was it? 6 months later, we see a new Eric Bratton. He's confident, focused, and on fire. He has been the #1 salesperson at his company for 3 of the last 5 months. He's on track to be Salesman of the Year. But the statistic he is proudest of is his commanding lead in the number of times he has failed. He knows that as long as he leads in that category, nothing can stop him. He's in a meeting with the vice president of a massive potential client, Callaway Golf. He's been turned down 17 times already by this company. After his presentation, the VP tells him no 4 more times. That's 21 no's. But the VP is impressed with his persistence and agrees to a follow-up meeting. As Eric is leaving, he notices a picture on the wall of a golf course. He recognizes it instantly from his dream. It's the view from the terrace of the house he woke up in. "I'll bet this picture was taken from the balcony of your house," he says with unnerving confidence. The VP is stunned. "How could you possibly know that?" Eric smiles. "Just a guess." He hands the man his card. "When you're ready to sell," he says, "don't bother calling a real estate agent. I'm the person who's going to buy your house." "You seem certain," the VP replies. "Not just certain," Eric says, heading for the door. "It's my destiny." As he turns to leave, the VP calls out, "Wait, you dropped something." Under the chair is a folded sheet of paper. He picks it up. He already knows what it is. It's the page he ripped from his other self's book. The page detailing the 5 failure levels. The proof. It wasn't just a dream. It was a glimpse of his potential. And now, he was finally becoming the man he was always meant to be. Commentary. What a powerful story. It's a reminder that sometimes the biggest breakthroughs in our lives don't come from learning a new technique or a clever strategy. They come from a simple, fundamental shift in perspective. The core lesson of Go for No is so beautifully simple. We have the wrong relationship with failure and rejection. We see them as enemies to be avoided, as signs that we should stop. The authors, through this wonderful parable, ask us to see them differently. They ask us to see failure not as a wall, but as a road. They ask us to see no not as a stop sign, but as a signpost pointing the way to yes. Think about your own life for a moment. How many times have you stopped yourself from trying something because you were afraid of being told no? Afraid of looking foolish? Afraid of failing? Maybe it was asking someone on a date, applying for a dream job, or starting that business you've always thought about. We let the fear of a 2-letter word paralyze our potential. We build our own imaginary glass walls, just like that pike in the tank. What this book teaches us is that the only way to break through those walls is to start bumping our noses against them on purpose. To desensitize ourselves to the sting of rejection by experiencing it more often. To make it a game. To set goals not for success, but for failure. This is a profoundly liberating idea. When your goal is to collect no's, you can't lose. If you get a yes, you've made a sale. If you get a no, you've hit your goal. Every outcome is a win. This simple shift removes the emotional weight of rejection and transforms it into a purely mathematical process. It turns fear into fuel. So, how can you start applying this today? Here are a few simple ideas. First, for the next week, set a small, daily no goal. It doesn't have to be in sales. It can be anything. Your goal could be to collect 3 no's each day. Ask a coffee shop for a 10% discount. Ask a stranger for directions to a place you already know how to get to. Ask a colleague for help on a task you could do yourself. The point isn't to get these things. The point is to practice hearing the word no and realizing that it doesn't hurt. It's just a word. Second, start tracking your ratios. In any area where you want to improve, just count the yeses and the nos. Don't judge them, just count them. You'll start to see that success is a predictable outcome of activity. If you know that for every 10 no's you get 1 yes, then getting a yes is no longer a matter of luck. It's just a matter of getting through 10 no's. And finally, practice saying next. The next time you face a small setback, you get a rejection email, you burn the toast, you get stuck in traffic, don't dwell on it. Just say next. To yourself, take a deep breath, and move on to the next thing. You are training your mind not to get bogged down by failure, but to see it as a minor event on a much longer journey. That was a summary of Go for No. Yes is the destination. No is how you get there. By Richard Fenton and Andrea Waltz. We've explored the main path of the story today, but I'll be honest with you. A summary is like looking at a map of a beautiful country. You can see the shape of the mountains and the path of the rivers, but you can't feel the sun on your skin or hear the wind in the trees. The real magic happens when you make the journey yourself. If any part of Eric's story resonated with you, I truly encourage you to pick up a copy of this little book. Reading it isn't just about learning a concept, it's an experience that can fundamentally change how you view your own courage and your own potential. The link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable and it gave you a new perspective, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to Billionaire's Bookshelf. It tells us we're on the right track and ensures you won't miss our next deep dive into another life-changing book. Let's keep learning and keep growing together.